Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today Ovechkin makes history, which means we got to talk about it and possibly talk about who our opinions of the greatest NHL goal scorers of all time are. More on that in a little bit, as well as other news and notes around the NHL. Guys, as usual, thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. If you're joining us here on YouTube, check it out down below, youtube.com/I-80 Sports. If you are listening here on your favorite streaming platform to listen to your podcast, I'll say it again, youtube.com/I-80 Sports. If you're joining us here on YouTube and you're not currently subscribed, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so that way you know when we go live. We normally do live episodes, but lately we've just been on a good recording kick lately. Can't quite get the schedules arranged and just kind of is what it is. But hit the bell notification so that way you know when we go live, and drop a like and comment down below with who you think is the greatest goal scorer of all time. Do you think it's Ovechkin? Do you think it's somebody else? Let us know. Join the conversation down below. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at I80_Sports NHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. Without you guys, we can't do this on a weekly basis. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. And we have a new milestone in the league, and we have an older type of situation going on here that's been a big debate amongst me and a lot of other people after last night as well. So let's just get right to it.
Well, let's debate that, shall we? And we might as well move on to the rest of the NHL news and notes before we talk about Ovechkin. Time to hit up that traffic report.
The I-80 Sports Traffic Report, where you can find all your news and notes from the week.
All right, as you guys know, our traffic report is reserved for all the news and notes around the NHL for this week. We're in the middle of December right now. It's 10 days away from Christmas. Holy moly, where is the time gone? Oh, God, I'm not done with my holiday shopping yet. Oh, God. But it's okay. Neither are the rest of you, so it's fine.
I haven't even started yet.
See, exactly. I'm not too worried. So we mentioned right before we took that short little break there that, we've got some old news to kind of talk about, but not like old news, but just like a continued conversation of a bygone era, if you will. All right, let's address the elephant in the room, or the elephant hit in the room. Minnesota Wild forward Ryan Reeves. Holy hell, that hit on Philip Hronek of the Detroit Red Wings just the other day. If you need to go, like literally, just go to Google if you don't know what I'm talking about right now. You can literally look up Ryan Reeves hit right now on Google. That's the first thing that pops up, is that Mack truck of an absolute collision. You need to go and look this up right now if you don't have any context to that, so that way you can know what we're talking about here. The question and the spark of debate with this one is, was it a clean hit? Does this still have a place in the NHL? Tom, let's start with you. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this, especially because Ryan Reeves is a former enforcer of the New York Rangers, recently traded from the New York Rangers. So let's start with you. First of all, was it a clean hit? And what are your thoughts on the hit?
Yes, it was clean. He didn't charge anybody. He didn't blindside anybody. Saw him coming. He slowed down. It was a clean hit. It was a clean hit. And I'm not going to debate that. To be honest with you, Ryan Reeves, I liked him on the Rangers. I never wanted him in New York. A guy like that, and it's no disrespect to guys like that, but the enforcer, the old school definition of the enforcer, doesn't work in today's game anymore. You're going to put a guy in a lineup who's going to go out there for the sole purpose of dropping the gloves and fighting. You have a guy in the fourth line, and if he can't contribute offensively by scoring goals or getting assists, or defensively by killing penalties, or just basically keeping the puck away from the other team, what do you really do? Now, the thing is that the definition of an enforcer, I'm talking about a pure enforcer. Now, somebody had brought up Patrick Maroon to me last night. Patrick Maroon is not an enforcer. Patrick Maroon is a third or fourth line guy. Yes. Is he a grinder? Most definitely. Is he a guy that can play on your bottom two lines, can play defensively, can maybe play on your penalty kill, can help you win a championship as a big part of your depth? Absolutely. No debating that. Not at all. I am not debating that. The thing is with a guy like Reeves, everyone says, oh, he brings energy. To a T, yes, he brought energy to the Rangers. Was that more of a ESPN BS thing showing him in the locker room before every game? Just because it's ESPN and they like to show BS things? Possibly. But the sheer fact of the matter is this. When the Rangers got healthy in the playoffs last year, there was not a spot for Ryan Reeves on that team. He watched the playoffs in street clothes. Only reason he was in uniform and dressed for any games is because he had injuries to guys like Barclay Goodrow and like Barclay Goodrow, another guy. A guy who can play a tough game. But Barclay Goodrow is not an enforcer. Can he fight? Absolutely. Is fighting the main focal point of his game? Absolutely not. No way. And I'm going to take you back on a history lesson here. And it's no disrespect. Well, before I even do that, I just want to talk a little bit more about Reeves. Reeves was brought into Minnesota to bring a jolt into the team. Yes, agreed. They wanted to bring in some jolt to the Minnesota Wild. But look at the Minnesota Wild right now and tell me, are they not a one-line team? Because in my eyes, they are. You have that top line with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, and then when you get below that, man, it doesn't look all that great. And you look at that Central Division right now. Winnipeg playing out of their mind. Dallas playing out of their mind. Colorado is icing a damn near AHL lineup, and they're still finding ways to win games. And when Colorado's guys come back, guys like McKinnon and guys like Landeskog, they're going to run through everybody again like I predicted last week. Colorado is fine. They found ways to win the other night against the Flyers who should have beat them. It was a damn near AHL lineup. Same thing with St. Louis. St. Louis had their full lineup in on Sunday afternoon. Mikko Rantanen scored a hat trick against them, won the game by himself. When Colorado gets healthy again, they're going to run through that Central Division. So the fact of the matter is this, you bring him in there, I guess, as entertainment, I guess to bring some energy to the team. But the truth is this, are the Wild even going to make the playoffs? Are the Wild even going to make the playoffs? And let me tell you this, if Bill Guerin didn't screw that cap up so much there, and they found a way to keep Kevin Fiala there, would Ryan Reeves even be there right now? Or would he be looking for work or playing elsewhere? Because he wasn't really in the Rangers' plans either. That's the thing. I don't really know. I just think Reeves wanted to get out of New York. The Rangers told him we don't have a spot for you anymore. And Minnesota went and took him because they had no idea what else to do. Because the honest to God reality with these Minnesota Wild are right now, they are a one-line team. But I'll end it with this. Rest in peace, Bob Probert. Bob Probert, for those who don't know, may have been the most decorated enforcer in league history. And Bob Probert, yeah, he could chip in with a goal and an assist there. He played some good minutes up in Detroit. He had some good years in Detroit. But Probert's game was fighting. That was the focal point of his game, was fighting. The Red Wings let Probert go in the mid-'90s in favor of players like Chris Draper and Kirk Maltby and Darren McCarty and even Joey Kosher to a lesser extent. So, okay, Probert, most decorated enforcer of all time. Rest in peace. He met a very sad ending. If you ever get a chance to watch a documentary on him on Amazon Prime, please do. Very sad, but you kind of understand what happened with him. But they let him go. Now, Kosher was sort of an enforcer, but he was also sort of a, kind of a fourth liner, kind of a magazine cover fourth liner. Draper and Maltby, could they fight? And McCarty, could they fight? Absolutely. Was fighting part of the main focal point of their game? No. Draper, Maltby, McCarty, the grind line, they could grind you down. They could play defense. They could wear you down. Hell, in 1997, Darren McCarty was playing on the first line with Steve Yzerman when the Red Wings broke their drought and won their first cup since 1955. So what I'm getting at is here. The Red Wings let an enforcer go. They brought 4 guys in, and you know what those 4 guys led to? Over the next 15 years, they won 4 Stanley Cups. Now, obviously, Kosher was only there for the first 2. Draper, Maltby, there for all 4. McCarty was there for 3, was on the team that won an Oit, but didn't play very much. Point being is this. You can have tough players on your third and fourth lines. They don't need to be enforcers, but they need to contribute. The day of the enforcer and the guy coming out, starting fights, fighting being the key focal point, it just doesn't work anymore. And I mean, other celebrated guys like Kelly Chase and Tony Twist who played for the St. Louis Blues. Okay, great, they fought, but what did the Blues really do back then? Not all that much, right? Not all that much. Not a knock against these guys. I'm just saying in today's game, it just doesn't work anymore.
I tend to agree. I mean, when I look back at like the New Jersey Devils and like when they were winning Stanley Cups in 95, 2000, and 2003, I mean, lest we forget on like that 2003 roster, fighting was slowly dying in 2003, like pre lockout, but it was still pretty heavily relied upon. If I'm a Devils fan and I'm thinking back to like 2003 and I'm looking at that roster, the first guys I mentioned on that roster are not the enforcers. I think about Patrick Elias. I think about Marty Brodeur. I think about Scott Stevens, who wasn't really an enforcer. He just hit really, really hard. Scott Niedermayer is the guy I think of. I don't think about Jim McKenzie, who was literally on that team to rack up 200 penalty minutes. I don't think about the guy that came in the year before in Darren Langdon, who came in to rack up
Ranger
too.
and let me just say one thing about Langdon as well. Langdon was on that 1994 Rangers Stanley Cup team. Didn't really play.
It's fun to look back in like the year 2000 and think about a young Krzysztof Oliwa like playing, but like the days of that is gone. The days of the pure enforcer could barely, stay on their skates and was literally just out there to be a boxer are gone. Days gone are the days of Peter Worrell and, oh my God, George LaRocque is another guy I think of, and that comes to mind for me. And Cam Jansen, like those days are gone. With Ryan Reeves, there is an element of offense to his game, but it's so limited that I just don't see a pace and play for his game anymore. You think about how fast the NHL has gotten over the past decade and a half, and it's staggering. It's staggering how fast this game has gotten. You've got the likes of Connor McDavid and Jack Hughes that can literally skate guys in circles now that the enforcer just doesn't work. They go right around these guys nowadays. That we don't, as Tom mentioned before, see coaches that are sending a goon out just to start a fight because most guys don't reciprocate anymore. Most guys aren't going to be quick to do that. Where they do reciprocate is cheap shots, cheap hits, just like that. I mean, the Ryan Reeves hit, not really cheap. You got to keep your head up in the NHL. It's clean, clean, clean. But to hit a guy like a Mack truck like that in the middle of the ice, days are gone of that. You do see responses from guys to jump up into jump in the ring and get into a little bit of a scrap for that and stand up for their teammate. But the days of like 2 fights per game are gone. Those days are long gone at this point. We look at how fast these teams have gotten. I hate to use the New Jersey Devils again, but like they're one of the fastest teams in the league right now. They're winning because speed kills at the moment. And a team like the Minnesota Wild, as Tom mentioned before, being a bit of a one-line team, which is kind of true to an extent because Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello on that top line really make up the majority of the work at the moment. You look at the rest of their lines, really the only identifiable guys throughout this lineup is maybe Matthew Boldy, Jordan Greenway, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Marcus Foligno. You've got Ryan Hartman on IR, and that's really the reason why Ryan Reeves is even able to step into this position at the moment.
Well, here's a better example for you, too, if you want to talk about speed. Those 2 Pittsburgh teams that won back-to-back in 16 and 17.
True,
Poster boys for speed. Basically took the AV Ranger blueprint and applied it to them, basically because, I hate to say it, they just had 2 better centers up top.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. And 2 fast centers at that, too. When Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin were in their prime, they were absolutely 2 of the faster guys in the NHL and playing up the middle. Yeah, I don't know. Days of enforcers are gone by me now. I mean, Tom also hit it on the head as well. I just think the days of the enforcer are pretty numbered at this point. You really don't see it that much anymore. Ryan Reeves is a dying art for sure. Moving on real quick here, we're going to keep the rest of our news here on the shorter side because we do want to move on to the topic at hand. We've got the injury report to talk about real quick, just some updates on some injuries that happened and occurred throughout the week. So I'll just go team by team as quickly as I can to just mention, some new injuries. For the Anaheim Ducks, it just keeps getting worse for them. Apparently, Anthony Stolarz placed on IR a few days ago with a lower body injury, and John Gibson is currently day-to-day with an undisclosed injury. He did leave the game on the 12th. I believe he's playing tonight, though, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like that injury was pretty insignificant, if I'm not mistaken. Anaheim also currently up 2-0 on the Montreal Canadiens at the end of the first period today on Thursday, that is. But I've seen that song and dance before. Only one regulation win so far on the season for them. Moving right along here down to the Buffalo Sabres. Henry Yokiharu is on IR, it seems like at the moment, for a lower body injury, as well as Vinny Hinostroza for an undisclosed injury. I'll try to look into that in the future at some point on what that injury actually is. Scrolling on down here now, nothing new with the Avalanche. One thing new with the Columbus Blue Jackets. It seems like Joonas Korpisalo has been placed on IR with a lower body injury, so hits just keep on coming to the Columbus Blue Jackets, unfortunately for them. For the Detroit Red Wings, shocker here, Philip Hronek is going to be day-to-day with a concussion. Shock and awe to there from the Ryan Reeves hit. Robert Haig is also going to be placed on IR with an undisclosed injury at the moment, and Oli Mata is also on IR due to illness, so I'm actually not quite sure what that entails. I think there's a bug going around with the Detroit Red Wings, if I'm not mistaken. I think something had been going around that locker room last I had checked. Moving on down to the Florida Panthers, you got some pretty insignificant injuries at the moment. Day-to-day stuff for Carter Verhaeghe, Colin White, Chris Tierney, and Spencer Knight. With Chris Tierney, it should be noted also, both Chris Tierney and Colin White left the game on December 12th. Colin White leaving with an upper body injury and Chris Tierney leaving with a concussion that night. For the LA Kings, Victor Arvidsson has been placed on IR for personal reasons. I have to look into that one, to be honest, because I can't remember which injury that one is at the moment. For the Montreal Canadiens, we got a few day-to-day injuries. Mike Matheson and David Savard are going to be day-to-day. It seems like they're probably going to play this week, though. Sean Monahan has been placed on IR with a foot injury. He left the game on December 4th. Nashville Predators day-to-day injuries for Alexander Carrier and Jeremy Lauzon. New Jersey Devils, nothing really new here to report, though. It should be mentioned that Mackenzie Blackwood is making his way back from his sprained MCL. He played last night in Utica, so it's going to be really interesting to watch and see what ends up happening with him, especially with how Akira Schmid has been playing as of late. New York Islanders, nothing really new here to report. Ottawa Senators, Tim Stützle has been placed on IR with an upper body injury, so he could miss a little bit of time here. Tyler Mott might not miss too much time here with an upper body injury. He's listed as day-to-day. Zach McEwen is also day-to-day with an undisclosed injury, though I think he's actually playing in tonight's game, so pretty insignificant there. Jason Zucker and Jeff Petrie for the Pittsburgh Penguins are also down with injury at the moment. Jeff Petrie has been placed on IR with an upper body injury, while Jason Zucker is listed as day-to-day with a lower body injury, but it actually might be more. Seems like they might be losing Jason Zucker for a little bit of time there, so more to come on that one when we have more information. Scrolling on down here, more so just insignificant injuries here from what it looks like. Tampa Bay Lightning, Vladislav Nemestikov and Mikhail Sergachev listed as day-to-day with some pretty insignificant injuries from what it seems like there. Vancouver Canucks, Brock Besser listed as day-to-day with illness. That's going to be something we might talk about next week with the Vancouver Canucks, to be honest. Vegas Golden Knights, Jack Eichel is on the mend with an injury, with a lower body injury. I don't know how significant that injury is offhand. It doesn't seem like it's anything that crazy. He's been playing out of his mind lately, by the way. Washington Capitals, Lars Eller is day-to-day with an undisclosed injury. Alexander Alexiev is also still on IR with an upper body injury. We'll mention that in the suspensions later. And lastly, with Winnipeg Jets, Logan Stanley on IR with a lower body injury. Any injuries jump out to you here, Tom?
No, nothing really. I mean, the Tony DeAngelo one is not an injury, but it makes me laugh because if you want to go back and if you guys want some entertainment.
Moving right along here, we're going to talk a few suspensions real quick. Seattle Kraken defenseman Jamie Alexiak was suspended 3 games for an illegal check to the head on Alexander Alexiev of the people that I mentioned before, with that out with an upper body injury right now. So it was so significant that he injured the poor kid. And the Buffalo Sabres forward Jeff Skinner has been suspended 3 games as well for a high stick / cross check on Jake Gensel of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tom, we'll keep it quick here. Do you think this was fair punishment for both men?
Yeah, I mean, anything to the head right now is 3 games. You know, every sport is trying to crack down on head hits. It's not the days of when I played travel 20 or so years ago when everybody was supposed to be the size of a vending machine, and if you got hit in the head, it was your fault because your head wasn't up. Those days are over. Cross-check it as well, man. You use your stick. Use your stick, even though these sticks are composite now, and they don't cause as much damage as the wood ones used to. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's you cross-check somebody, it's violent, you can get hurt. You know, seriously hurt. So 3 games, due punishment.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fair. 3 games, I mean, for hits to the head on both men, as we described before. There's just no place for it in hockey anymore. There's no place for it in any organized sport. I mean, most organizations now are cracking down on hits to the head and how it affects the brain. So just very logical for the league to crack down on this. Both were pretty ugly. If you go and watch them back, I had to watch them back today to really kind of see. But yeah, both were pretty ugly to watch. So perfectly fair for 3 games for both Jamie Alexiak and Jeff Skinner. Some quick hits before we move on to our main topic of the day. The LA Kings announced today that they have extended defenseman Trevor Moore for 5 years for a total of $21 million. Pretty fair price for Trevor Moore, if you ask me. And the Seattle Kraken over the weekend made a waiver claim, actually a pretty interesting waiver claim. The Seattle Kraken claimed Eli Tolvanen off of waivers from the Nashville Predators, former, high prospect for the Nashville Predators, Eli Tolvanen. Pretty good waiver claim by the Kraken. I'm actually a really big fan of this one. A change of scenery could be really, really good for Tolvanen. He's a guy who, he was a highly touted prospect for the Predators for a reason. I think a change of scenery for him could make the world of difference in playing in Seattle with how they're playing right now. I think that's just honestly a good call. But that's all for the news and notes of the week. Let's get into the real nitty-gritty and talking about the great chase of all things. So it's time to pump the brakes.
Not so fast. It's time to pump the brakes. So we're going to talk right now about Alexander Ovechkin, the Great 8, if you will. Alexander the Great. Tuesday night, he scores his 800th career goal. And should I also mention, I said Great Chase before. He's trademarking that. He's actually trademarking that phrase, the Great Chase. No, he's not egotistical at all. But look, there's no doubt about it. Of our current generation, he is the most prolific goal scorer of all time. There's a lot of players that we think about in our current generation of hockey players. When we think about prolific goal scoring, I think of him. I think of Jaromir Jagr. I think of Teemu Selanne, who was a little bit earlier, if you will, in the 90s and 2000s, but he still had such an impact on the fast pace of play that we play in the NHL nowadays. But I'm going to turn it over here, and I encourage you guys to comment down below with this one. I would love to engage in conversation with you guys down below. And this is certainly going to be based on our opinion. You can agree, you can disagree with our takes, but hopefully we have more people agree with our takes for sure. But Tom, I'm going to let you start on this one and have a little bit of fun with this one. Who in your mind is the greatest goal scorer of all time, in your opinion? And it could be relegated to the NHL. It could be North American hockey. It could be world hockey. But I'm going to turn it over to you on this one. Who do you think is the greatest goal scorer of all time, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I know a lot of people say Gretzky. I think Gretzky's the greatest player to ever put on the skates. But Gretzky was more known for his playmaking abilities. Gretzky could score goals, but let's just say Gretzky wasn't a flashy goal scorer. Gretzky wasn't particularly known for his goal scoring. Gretzky was just known for the way he saw the ice. Somebody once said Gretzky doesn't play hockey. He plays chess at 40 miles an hour. And I find that to be true. I mean, for anyone who didn't see Wayne Gretzky play, you see his videos, you watch the guy. This guy was full of smarts. Now, if we're talking regular season and regular season only, I mean, I really think you could say Alexander Ovechkin. He definitely has put up the goals in the regular season. He's won his fair share of Rocket Richards. What concerns me with Ovechkin are his playoff numbers. He has the one cup. Yes, he put up the numbers for that one cup. Most definitely. But Ovechkin never went past round 2 except for the year they won the cup. And in the last 5 years, he never got out of the first round. that was my qualm with Ovechkin. And I don't know if Ovechkin really had that big playoff moment where we're like, okay, this is going to leapfrog him to somewhere. Ovechkin there was a double hat trick game back in 2009, Caps and Pens. He had a hat trick. Crosby had a hat trick. The Caps won the game, but the Caps didn't come out in the series. Wayne Gretzky had a big playoff moment against the Maple Leafs, Game 7, 1993, to get the Kings into the finals. We all know, near and dear to your heart, Brian, Mark Messier, the guarantee, Game 6. Steve Yzerman blasted that puck past St. Louis in 96 to get the Red Wings over. And you know what? I'm even going to discount that. Steve Yzerman, when he took over Game 2 against the Avs in 97, and that springboarded the Red Wings to a Stanley Cup. Even last year, Connor McDavid, when he scored the big OT winner against Calgary in the Battle of Alberta to put Edmonton through. And just what you saw out of Nathan McKinnon in the playoffs last year either. The big moments for Ovi in the playoffs were never really there for me at least. You can debate me all you want on this. For me, those moments were never there. Crosby had his moments. Golden goal, Team Canada, 3 cups with the Penguins. He won 2 Conn Smythes in a row. Crosby had his moments. But if I'm going to talk about a guy who was the best goal scorer ever, I got to talk about somebody who did it in the regular season and the playoffs. Now, Gretzky, Messier, Yzerman, good all-around players, but they weren't really pure goal scorers. Crosby either, to tell you the truth. But this is a guy, we're going to go back about 80 years here. Maurice Rocket Richard. Guy's got a trophy named after him. I mean, wow. Maurice Richard, first player to ever score 50 goals, and he did it in 50 games. But some of his best feats he ever had came in the playoffs. 2 prime examples here. 1944, when he was on his way to winning his first Stanley Cup. Semifinals, because back then there were just the semifinals and the finals. It was a 16 league. Now, you can argue that too. Well, it was a 16 league. Agreed. But then again, you only had enough. Your talent pool filled out 6 teams. So that means of the 32 teams we have today, there were a lot of players back then who were career minor leaguers who in today's game probably would have had nice NHL careers. Point being is this. He had a 5-goal game against Toronto in the 44 playoffs. He scored all 5 goals against them to leapfrog the Habs into the finals where they'd eventually win the cup. And then in 1957, he was 36 years old. The Habs were going for their second cup in a row at the time. Granted, Richard won his fair share of cups. He did. Ridge 16 league, I'll admit that. 1957 finals, 36 years old, versus the Boston Bruins. Game 1 of those finals, 4 goals in a 5-1 victory to will the Habs to, at the time, their second straight cup. It was Richard's, let me think about it. 44, 46, 53, 56. It was Richard was going for his 5th Stanley Cup at the time. But he had a 4-goal performance against the Bruins. I always felt with Ovechkin, he should have won more than the 1 cup. And granted, he had some good playoff stats early on when the Caps were the offensive juggernaut under Bruce Boudreau. Problem with those teams was exactly what I mentioned earlier. Teams couldn't get out of the first or second round ever. The teams that Washington built, in 2013, he had 1 goal. 2015, I believe he had, actually, I have it right here in the playoffs. 2015, let me just bring it up. He had 5 goals in 14 games. The Caps went out in 7 against the Rangers. Okay, the Caps were a second-place team that year. In 2013, they still won their division, but I don't think anyone considered them a contender, but they got embarrassed in Game 7 on their home ice against the Rangers, lost 5-0, when that really could have been Ovi's chance to step up and have a big playoff moment against a Rangers team that, outside of Rick Nash, didn't have much offensive threats that year. The teams that came after that, the 16 and 17 Washington Capitals, teams that ran through everybody, won the President's Trophy. They didn't get it done in 16. They lost to Pittsburgh. But you figure, okay, in 17, they get it done. They didn't get it done that year either. You figure one of those teams, and granted, that was a learning curve for the 18 team. One of those teams should have probably won the cup. Don't know which one, but one of them probably should have won it. In 2016, he only had 5 goals in 12 games. In 2017, 5 goals in 13 games. So that's where my qualm with Ovechkin comes up. And that's why maybe I consider Richard a little bit better. Just because, like I said before, and I'll allude back to it earlier, some of Maurice Richard's greatest scoring feats came in the playoffs, came to willing his team to a Stanley Cup. You know, that's how I believe it. So it's debatable. It really is debatable between Ovechkin and Richard at this point, I would say. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I love your pick of Rocket Richard, by the way, just because when we think about like original goal scoring, like Rocket Richard is like the epitome of that. He has a trophy named after him for goal scoring. He's got to be one of the greatest.
I mean, I could have taken it back even further and been a real homer and said Bill Cook, who really should be the greatest New York Ranger to ever play, but the organization doesn't honor him at all. The guy won 2 cups and 2 scoring titles. Had he been playing for the Rangers today, they'd have a statue of him outside the Garden, probably taller than the building itself.
Yeah,
but that's just a thing that's just something that popped in my head.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there are a few names to me that come to mind when we think about the greatest goal scorers of all time that we've seen, whether it's NHL or North American hockey. I mean, Gretzky is obviously up there and top 3 and just on the Mount Rushmore in general, just because I think he is the greatest person to lace up a pair of skates ever. I don't know if he's the greatest overall goal scorer. He was one of the best playmakers I've ever seen play the game, but I don't know if he's the greatest goal scorer. A lot of people would also be quick to say Gordie Howe, which I think is much closer. He may have only ended up with 801 NHL goals, but people also are quick to forget he has a North American record at 975 goals. So it's a lot closer there. His longevity was insane, but I think he may actually be second best when we think about greatest goal scorers. Honorable mention here that I do want to mention is Mario Lemieux, Super Mario, because when we think about greatest goal scorers, a lot of people are so quick to forget about Mario Lemieux, and I don't understand why. I mean, the dude literally scored 85 goals in 88-89 and also had another 5 seasons where he scored more than 60. He scored 69 in 95-96, and he also scored the same total in 92-93. He also scored 70 in 87-88. So yeah, he's up there too. Brett Hull is also an honorable.
I didn't even think about him.
Yeah, Brett Hull's an honorable mention to me too. When we think about American skaters, Brett Hull's absolutely
that's debatable.
That's technically
debatable.
Technically, by mere technicality. Nah, to me, there's one real clear answer for the greatest goal scorer of all time, and I know Tom might disagree with me here, but it's okay. Mike Bossy. And I know it's not the most popular.
Listen, it's got nothing to do with the stats with Bossy.
It's the person. I know.
I look at the stats. It's his off-ice behavior in regards to some other hockey players, and I'm going to leave it at that.
I agree, but I'm going to separate the person from the hockey player real quick. I'm just going to do my best to do that. When we're looking at just pure stats from Mike Bossy, I mean, it's just purely insane. First of all, you look at the goal total and it doesn't really jump out to you. 573 goals. Now, when you think about that total, you're thinking, that's it? When we're talking about greatest goal scorers, that's it? Until you realize that he did that in only 752 games. Dude only played 10 seasons in the NHL. Let me run the numbers for you real quick. In those 10 seasons, he only had 1 season where he didn't score more than 50 goals, and that was his last season where he only played 63 games. He still managed to put up 38 goals in that season. So his lowest goal total in the NHL is 38 goals. Bananas already. He has 9 seasons with more than 50 goals. He has 5 seasons, more than half his career, with more than 60 goals in the season. Let's just run down the years real quick. 77-78, 53 goals. Next season, 69. Next season, 51. Then 68. Then 64. Then 60. 51. 58. 61. 38. Wow. Tom mentioned before that Ovechkin can't really be considered because of his playoff record. And you know what? Mike Bossy has playoff goals. Mike Bossy is one of the biggest reasons why the Islanders won 4 straight Stanley Cups in the 70s and 80s. Let me run down these totals.
Here, let me run this by you real quick. Would you consider him the best player on those Islanders teams? I actually wouldn't, to tell you the truth.
I wouldn't either. I don't think he was the best player on that roster. I think when I think of the best player on that roster, probably Potvin.
I go with Brian Trottier.
Trottier too.
As much as I have some qualms against him as well. But
true.
Yeah.
So in those 4 Stanley Cup series, in those 4 Stanley Cup winning playoff runs, Mike Bossy in 72 games throughout those 4 playoff runs, 72 games, 61 goals in those playoff series. scored 10 goals in his first Stanley Cup win, 17, then 17, then 17. Consistency, children. That is key. That is the key to success. But wow, Mike Bossy, it might be one of the best pure goal scorers just by this metric alone of all time. And he's very quickly forgotten in the conversation here. It really makes you wonder if he doesn't get hurt and he doesn't have chronic injury, how many more goals does he score in just 5 more seasons? Because he retires at the age of 30. Realistically, NHL players, they played for a long time. Look at Gordie Howe. I think Bossy could have made it to either 38 or 40 if he really pushed himself. Who knows? I mean,
you got to think too, though. Those Islanders teams, as the '80s wore down into the '90s, were not very good either.
No, and it also makes you wonder if Mike Bossy would have been a lifer Islander as well. Because look, if Gretzky wasn't safe during that time, Mike Bossy would not have been safe.
That's a whole different thing, though.
I know it is, but let me dream, damn it. But it makes you wonder if he even plays 5 more seasons at the pace he was on. I mean, does he pass Howe at that point? I think he probably does. Honestly, you pace it out. I think he probably passes Gordie Howe in the NHL record there. We might be in the conversation of talking about, Gretzky and Bossy kind of playing leapfrog with each other in goal totals, to be honest. But yeah, he's one of the biggest reasons why the Islanders won 4 straight cups in the 70s and 80s, along with the cast and crew of others for those Islanders teams. But it's nuts. I mean, could Ovechkin eventually get the NHL record, and surpass 894 goals? Yeah, I think he does. And I think he ultimately will. But will I consistently wonder what could have been with Mike Bossy? And would that goal total have really been 894? Absolutely. Because I don't know. I sit here and I wonder, should 894 really be the true goal total, or would Mike Bossy have passed that? I don't know. That's just a question for a different day. I think you could debate that down below. If you have different picks, let us know down below. Let us know. We would love for you guys to join the conversation and let us know who you think the greatest goal scorers are. I mean, to me, I also have a couple other honorable mentions to mention real quick. When I think of greatest goal scorers, Teemu Selanne, I think, is up there. Jaromir Jagr, I think, is there too. Pavel Bure, if he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
The Russian Rocket, I think of as well as like a guy that in a short span of time did a lot of damage.
True. But I mean, my thing with Richard and with Bossy too, with respect as well, is that those guys went deep into the playoffs and their goal scoring led to championships. Bure had a nice run in '94, but that was it. By the time Selanne won his cup, he wasn't really let's just say he wasn't the key focal point of that 07 Ducks team. Jagr, when he won his 2, was a third liner in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That was early on.
Jagr, I mean, yeah, when he was younger, but Jagr was a third liner on those back-to-back Pittsburgh teams.
He was young too, though. You had Lemieux and Francis on your friend. And the funny part about it is we brought up Brian Trottier. Brian Trottier was his center for those 2 cup teams.
Yeah.
The 92 team should have never won. Thanks, Richter. Thanks for not letting us send that curse 2 years early.
Yeah. I mean, as days go by, though, I mean, if we're thinking about future guys that we could be talking about on this list, I mean, I think it needs to be said, too, that, like, we could be potentially down the line talking about Austin Matthews on this list. We could eventually be talking about Connor McDavid possibly on this list as years go by. Maybe even Leon Draisaitl makes a quick appearance on a list like this.
Most definitely. Connor Bedard.
Connor Bedard, if he pans out, maybe Jack Hughes. No, I'm kidding. Maybe not Jack Hughes, but at the same time, you never know. But it's always fun to talk about. It's a fun topic of conversation. Join the conversation down below. Let us know what you think and who you think is the greatest goal scorer of all time in your opinion. Just no trash takes down below either, please. But all right, time to round up this episode. Let's see who did really, really good hockey things this week. Let's talk high performance.
Your I-80 Sports High Performance Players of the Week.
We got hockey players doing hockey things. Tom, who hockeyed the hardest this week?
Well, I just want to preface it on one thing. That little gesture you saw me do before, Jimmy Vesey took the puck coast to coast to put the Rangers up 2-1.
Jimmy Vesey going coast to coast? What
Yeah.
year is it? Good Lord, what year is it?
I'll tell you what, man. I don't put goalies into this conversation much, but I got to give credit to where credit's due, and I'm not going to talk about a player named Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals. I'm going to talk about a player named Charlie Lindgren. 5 wins in a row for the Caps. Caps are making it interesting, as a lot of people just thought the Caps were going to be kind of a team out of the playoffs this year, worrying about Ovechkin scoring goals. They're kind of in the mix right now for that wild card spot. Will they sustain it? Who knows? But, I mean, I got to give it credit where credit's due. Charlie Lindgren, 5 wins in a row. And the funny part about it is he's supposed to be their backup. Darcy Kemper is supposed to be having a starting job after winning that cup for Colorado last year. Another one. This is more of a obvious. William Nylander, for the Leafs, had a 5-point night versus Calgary Flames last Saturday. Led the Leafs to victory. Leafs are playing good hockey right now, but I drank the Leaf Kool-Aid, as you've seen on this show in the past couple of years. I'm not drinking it anymore until I see them win 4 games in April past game 82. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. My last one is a guy I brought up last week, actually. Josh Morrissey of the Winnipeg Jets. I don't know where this came from, man, but he is having a monster year over there in Winnipeg. 8 points in his last 5. Jets are playing some good hockey. So I got to give credit where credit's due. Josh Morrissey, and, Morgan Barron scored a goal for them last night, and I'm still real pissed off about that trade, but we'll leave that alone.
So I got to mention this because you mentioned Josh Morrissey, and this is really flown under the radar here. But, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you on this one real quick. Do you realize that Josh Morrissey leads the Winnipeg Jets in points this year?
Yes, I brought that up last week. It's crazy. The guy has never had more than, I think, I'm not going to look up his stats. Go back to last week with the point total I had, and I'm sorry I forgot it, guys, but he's going to shatter his record this year. He may even be in the conversation for the Norris. Maybe.
Honestly, I think if Winnipeg makes the playoffs, I think Josh Morrissey should absolutely be in that conversation for the Norris Trophy, to be honest. And he's over a point per game right now. You might even go well beyond just the Norris Trophy if the Winnipeg makes it. You might be talking maybe finishing in the top 6 for the Hart Trophy potentially. But 32 points in 28 games thus far, 5 goals, 27 assists for him so far in the season. You got 2 guys close behind him, though, in Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, 30 points respectively for both men in 28 games. Winnipeg's really stringing a good season along right now. Talk about a team that's just been, between a leadership change and a coaching change, has really just, done a total 180 this season. Really good things in Winnipeg this year. For me, players of the week that I want to mention, Matt Tkachuk is off to a great start with Florida this year. I mentioned Pavel Bure before. To start the season, Matt Tkachuk has the most point totals of any player in their franchise history up to this point, and that includes Pavel Bure, which is insane. He's off to a great start, 10 points in his last 7 games. You want to know who has 10 points in shorter span of time? Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers as well. He's stringing some nice games along with 10 points in his last 6 games as well. He's been a key contributor for the Edmonton Oilers. And, Tom didn't mention Ovechkin before, so I'm going to give him a little bit of hype right now.
I just thought it was obvious. I didn't really want to bring him up again.
Hey, screw it. I'm going to go with obvious here. Alexander Ovechkin with a hattie on Tuesday night. What a way to score number 800, the 3rd goal of the night, number 800 on the career. Well done to Alexander Ovechkin. Congratulations to him. We know that he is we're probably going to be talking next week about him passing Gordie Howe next week, and we're going to have to talk about that a little bit next week, more than likely, but that's for a future episode. That'll be next week's problem. But let's round out today with our question of the day. Let's keep it Ovechkin-centric. How many goals does Ovechkin end the season with, in your opinion, and do you think he passes Gretzky in the coming years? Tom, what do you think?
All right, well, let me just pull up his stats here because I had it up and clicked out of it completely by accident, like I happen to always do. Give me 1 second. So, Ovechkin right now, let me pull it up. Taking forever. My apologies. He has 20 goals in 30 games right now. I mean, I think he definitely could hit 50 if he doesn't get hurt. Definitely 50 plus. I can't see why he wouldn't. Will he pass Gretzky is the real question. Not this year, obviously. Coming years, I think it could happen unless he gets hurt to the point where he can't play anymore, because he's not going to retire on his own accord without this record. He would have to get hurt to the point where the doctors advise him that you can't play anymore. Or it would have to come to a point where Washington doesn't want him anymore and they want to rebuild and nobody wants to take on his contract. That's the only way it would happen. But I want to preface it with this. This record that he's chasing right now, this goals record, is only regular season goals. Doesn't count the playoffs. And what I wanted to bring up earlier was that Wayne Gretzky in the playoffs has about 122 playoff goals. Ovechkin doesn't have that. I don't think he's going to come close to that.
No.
Yeah, that's my other thing. So that's my only qualm with Ovechkin is that playoff goal-wise, I don't know if he'll ever catch Gretzky. No. Let me just pull up his playoff stats real fast. Gretzky has 122. And I would say WHA goals, but then the thing with that is that Ovechkin has 72. So in reality, could he catch Gretzky? He would need to score 50 more goals in the playoffs. I don't foresee that happening with Ovechkin. So I think at the end of the day, Ovechkin will get the regular season record, but I think Gretzky will still own the overall record. I have a hard time seeing Ovechkin over the next couple of years pot 50 goals in the playoffs. I just have a hard time seeing it. I mean, with Gretzky, you could also argue WHA totals, but then with Ovechkin, you could throw in Russian Super League and KHL totals as well to negate that. But yeah, I do think that he will probably pass Gretzky, barring either an injury or it comes to a point where no one wants to sign him.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, he's got 20 goals so far in 31 games. Realistically, if over this pace, I'm going to say realistically he scores between 40 and 45, barring injury. I think that's realistic for him this year, between 40 and 45, which would leave him currently at around 820, 825 goals. So you're looking at another, I can do math, another like 70 goals until he reaches Gretzky. If he keeps up the production over 2 seasons, by age 39, 40 years old, we could be talking about him getting the record, potentially. I think he does make it. I think he does get to the regular season record. I think he is going to aim to get 900 goals in over the course of his NHL career. I think that's what he's going to aim for. I don't think he touches Gordie Howe's North American record of 975, though.
Well, actually, that technically is not right either. North American record, if you're counting WHA, 1072. That's Gretzky's. That's that.
Oh yeah, shoot, that is right.
NHL and WHA regular season, all competitions in pro hockey in North America, it's 1072 because Wayne Gretzky scored it in his second to last game, and I remember running around my house like a maniac as an 11-year-old when he did it.
Yeah, nah, technically true. He was also super freaking young when he did that too.
I was
with
11,
WHA meeting in the WHA with the Indianapolis Racers.
And the Oilers, he did play for the Oilers in WHA as well.
That's true too. But I think Ovechkin does eventually pass Gretzky in the NHL record books. I don't think he touches any of the top 2 in the North American record books, though. But still, not to undercut Ovechkin, kudos to him. He's definitely the best goal scorer of our current generation for sure. But as usual, guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree with our takes? Let us know down below. And make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/i80 sports. Hit the bell notification so that way you know when we go live. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sports NHL. If you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. But time to watch more hockey. I'm going to go and watch a Devils game right now because I think they're currently tied with the Philadelphia Flyers. Yikes. But until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been yet another episode of NHL on i80 Sports.